doesn't come in. Well, also because it's not, they're different shades of black. But even so, my first impulse would be, crop it.
Hello, everyone. Let's see here. I guess we can turn off the lights whenever somebody's ready. I'm going to sit down for part of this, but stand up for parts of it. I was going to show you just the project that is upstairs. I don't know if anybody's seen Drabbles, which, okay. I'm going to show you a bunch of these, and I'm going to show you a little bit behind the scenes and how I did them and how I made choices I made and whatnot. But let me start a little bit from the beginning. I'm a portrait photographer. I have been so for not that long. I've probably been taking pictures, honestly, for about 4 or 5 years. Before that, I did advertising. I was an art director and decided I didn't want to be an art director and sell toothpaste anymore. My father died 5 years ago, actually, last Thursday. And I said, you know what? I don't want to do something that doesn't make me happy. So I started taking pictures. And not only do I do, obviously, professional work, editorial and advertising and whatnot, but I do my own projects. And a few years ago, I did a series called 365 Portraits, which many of you may or may not have seen, but all of them involved a lot of well, not all of them, but a lot of them involved a lot of eye contact. I'm a big fan of eye contact. Polaroid 55, anybody want to say some sad words for that? I love that stuff. So I had a lot of good subjects, and I was searching for a new project for the past couple of years. And what I do is I'll go and I want to find something interesting to me, you know, something that is not contrived. A lot of people come up with an idea and they say, oh, I'm going to start taking pictures of, I don't know, you know, older women in upstate New York, and like that's their series. And that's fine for a lot of people. For me, I just feel like it's too constrictive in an odd way. I need things to be a little bit more flowing. So I finished this project, and I went about a year, and I couldn't find anything else that really got me excited. I tried doing another project, which if I can find my cursor here, where's my cursor? There it is. I tried a project called Laid Off, where I was shooting diptychs of people in their work clothes who had been laid off, and so in their sitting home clothes. She's a professional dancer. He used to work at an insurance firm. Here he is at home. I did 3 or 4 of these, and I said, you know what, this isn't exciting me. So I changed things up a little bit, and I took this picture of a guy named Frank Basili. I was at the Village Vanguard. Anybody ever go there on Monday nights to see the big band? Frank was sitting in as the Barry player one night that I was there last spring, spring of 2009. And I said, he dressed like this, which I thought was so cool. He was like straight out of the 50s, you know? So I said, you know, Frank, I want to take your picture. And he said, okay. He's now my friend. He said, okay. So we went to Fat Cat down in the Village one afternoon, and we took these pictures, and I really like this one. Makes me happy. So I thought, you know what, I want to do something like this. I like this kind of like almost cinematic-y kind of look. A few months later, I was up in Connecticut with my girlfriend, and my father had a 63 Chevy Impala convertible. Yeah. But since he had died, it's just sitting in the garage, and it wasn't being used. And so I said, Heather, you have a black dress or something with you, right? And she's like, oh, yes. And I said, okay, go put it on. Let's take some pictures. So we went and took pictures in the car. And I liked this picture. This picture made me go, oh, yeah. I want to do a whole series like that, right? So cinematic, and I like the sort of wide-angle look where you see a lot of stuff around them. I like the fact that she wasn't looking at the camera, you know? Things that I don't normally do. I generally, if I'm shooting somebody, I generally will meet up with them and come up with the idea on the fly. I like sort of just seeing what comes of the interaction between myself and the subject. But for this one, obviously, we created this out of, she's not normally like this. Well, I mean, she's beautiful, but she's not normally, sitting in the back of her car with her foot pushing the thing forward. So these are a little bit more contrived than my usual work. So I said, you know what, let's do a series that are contrived, that are not standard. So I made some rules, because I went to music school, and it's funny because all these arts have so much to do with each other. It's like in jazz, like these people are playing whatever notes they want within a certain chord structure, but that chord structure puts up walls, but the walls are good because it makes you think differently, So I made rules for myself. I had to use the same wide-angle lens. This is a 28mm lens on a full-frame camera. All the pictures in the series were taken with that. There are 46 total images. I needed to use some artificial lighting. I'm a big fan of available light, which is great, but people want to see stuff that is more crazy. So that's what I did. That was one of the rules. All of them were landscape orientation, not portrait, and no eye contact. That was another one of my rules, because I usually love playing with the eyes, but I decided against it. So I went and did a few of these things. Let's see a few. The first one was a woman named Lydia, who you guys just saw a second ago. Sorry about that. And there she is. Okay, so I had a couple assistants with me on many of these shoots. Dan, who is sitting over here on a bunch, and Meg, who I think is in the back. Are you? There you are, on a few. Most of these are, some of them we came up ideas, myself and the subject. A lot of them were ideas that I had. A couple of them were ideas the subject had. The picture I took of Heather in the car was in mid-September of last year, and I started October 1. I did the first 21 in 3 weeks. I did one a day for 3 weeks. So, they started like this. There's this gentleman on the shore. It's like, is he jumping in? The whole idea was, originally, the code name for the project was striking. I wanted interesting looking people. So I searched, and I put out, notes for people saying, does anybody know anybody who's interesting looking? So people sent me all kinds of people. I had probably 150 subjects to choose from, and a number of whom are friends of mine or people that I contacted that I wanted to shoot. So that was the idea initially, this striking concept. A lot of the ideas had to do with the people themselves. So if I can get this thing over here, sorry. I met a guy who said he was very tall. So I said, well, Matt, why don't we try to make you look like you're really, really tall? So you have to play around a little bit. They were ideas, and a lot of them were all about things that I didn't know whether I could actually pull off. I was standing outside one day eating a slice of pizza, and a little kid was on one of those coin-operated horse things. And I said it'd be really funny to have an adult on one of those. So this is Ann Olson. She's a professional dancer for Paul Taylor, and she was a very good sport. And we actually put quarters in and had her ride, which, yeah. Most of these, as far as equipment goes, I shoot with a 5D Mark II most of the time, but these are all, 90% of them is just a couple of speed lights. These aren't big setups, right? These are sort of on the fly kinds of things you could do. My friend Amber used to be a ballet dancer. So I said, how about we take you to a really interesting place in Williamsburg and have you hailing a cab on point, She actually made her own tutu. I said, do you have a tutu? She's like, no. And I said, okay, it'll work fine, it'll be fine. Then she shows up and she has a tutu. I was like, where the hell did you get a tutu? She goes, oh, I made it last night. And I was like, okay, you are an interesting person. Really, really interesting. Let me give you another example here. I shot a guy named Rob Meyer, who's a metal worker. And we went to his shop. He makes furniture and that kind of stuff, like custom furniture. And I said, Rob, can you make sparks? And he's like, yeah. And I said, okay, can you make smoke? And he said, yeah. And I was like, I love you. Can you make sparks over here and smoke over there? And we took like 4 shots, and this is one of them. Yeah, I was happy with that one. That one came out pretty cool. I used to date a girl named Cynthia, who is this girl here, which you may have seen in, yeah. What's that?
I think there's a postcard with that.
There is a postcard with this shot, yeah. This is Cynthia. I don't know where the original idea for this one came from. I liked the idea of it raining inside. And so we searched around town for these clear umbrellas, which are everywhere in Japan, but you can't find them. And like we went everywhere. Finally found one in some junky tourist store down like in Wall Street. But Cynthia was, she's a good sport. She like actually, sit there, went like this. There was no real water in the shot. I'll show you a little bit later, before and after, but the water in the glasses was there, but most of the other stuff wasn't. Let me show you. I could show you right here. Okay, here's Cynthia after. That's the before shot, just for people who are interested. As you can see, there is a fair amount of post-production involved. Probably 8 hours or so.
Was that Photoshop?
Yeah, a lot of Photoshop. And in a couple of minutes, I'll get into some of that. I'm going to show you some layered documents and unlayer them and show you some ideas and things, if that's all right with you guys. I figure it'd be more interesting than just sort of showing the same shots that you guys can see online. Yeah, so Cynthia was good. My friend Nick is my friend because he runs the diner up at the corner. And I said, Nick, we should shoot you. He's like, okay. And I said, well, you run a cash business. You got to hide money, I don't know that he does, but I was thinking that in my head, and he was a good sport. And I said, okay, let's put a bunch of napkins in a bag and act like you're hiding them up in the roof and somebody caught you, Yeah, he's good. He hates this picture because you can see his underwear. He's very, very upset about it. Yeah, he was really glad that I didn't choose it for one of the 20 upstairs because he was like, oh man, my underwear's gonna be showing? I was like, no, you're all right, I saved you. I had an idea to shoot a woman in a window. I wanted to do like a mannequin in a window. So I was shooting, this is a girl named Ivy, and I said, man, I really need a window. Does anybody know somebody who has a window that I can borrow for, I don't know, half an hour? And a girl that I know said, oh yeah, my girlfriend from college, her boyfriend runs this store down on Prince Street, and she'll do whatever it takes to get it for you. And I was like, score, So I talked to the guy on the phone. He said, yeah, if you don't mind coming down today at 5, you can have it for an hour. I said, perfect. And he pulled everything out of the window. And I'll actually show you. See over there. There's actually Claude, who's sitting down here on the floor. Over there on the right, grimacing, trying to hold the light up. What's funny is that you would think that the lights up top above her that are aiming down would be enough to light her that way, But in actuality, no, you just get piles of shadows all over her. So I filled from outside the window and had to fix that after the fact, So it sort of became, this was the original shot, and then I cleaned up the geometry of it to get a little more square, as you can see. I'm going to go between the two. I replaced the light up top and the people inside, got rid of them. But then from there to the final shot, a lot of it is a lot of shading, right? It's a lot of creating mood. It's highlighting the person and de-highlighting the environment a little bit, because you got to make them pop out. I mean, I think this is a fine picture before I did anything to it, but I think it's a little bit more of a painting that way, If I'm going too fast or if anybody has any questions, let me know, and I'll answer questions after if you have them. So anyway, these are some of the ideas that I had, The other funny thing is that a lot of them ended up being stories. Oops, sorry. There we go. Being stories that went from one to the other to the other. Let me find... Where is Chris Berger on the skateboard? That is the question. Oh, can I do that? Yes, I can. Okay, here's Chris Berger on the skateboard. A woman that I shot for 365 portraits, I sent out a big thing and said, does anybody know anybody? And she said, there's a guy who works in my IT department who has this crazy beard and a bald head. If anybody was here for the opening a few weeks ago, Chris was actually here, and I never talked to him after the shoot, and I was kind of worried that he didn't like the picture. But he was like, no, I totally love it. And I was like, phew. I have a weird thing. I want people to like my pictures. It's a weird thing. But the one thing I wanted to play with was the idea that, is he going to give his girlfriend flowers, or is he heading to tie somebody up? You know, this is the question, right? So I used those flowers the next day in Greenwood Cemetery. You know, so there are ties between a lot of these pictures. In fact, the rope also got used a few days later to tie this girl to the railroad tracks. This was down in Red Hook. This is arguably the most photoshopped of all the images. They're actually not a tornado. And there were water taxis all in the water right there. I don't have the before with me, but that one got a little crazy. I actually it was pouring rain. That rain on the left there is actual rain. I took 10, 12 pictures because it was freezing out. I took out all these in the winter time. So this was like January, and she's out there in that dress, and it's raining. It's pouring, actually. And she brought her boyfriend, so I felt really bad for tying her up in front of her boyfriend. I think he wanted to beat me up. But, you know, it worked. So I took all these pictures, and I thought, okay, yeah, I have enough what I need. A lot of times during my shoots, I'm trying to get raw material that I can turn into something later, you know. So it's not so much of getting the lighting and everything exactly perfect. As long as it's enough that I can work with after the fact, I'd rather have the control later, you know. Because the moment with the subject, I'm not going to spend 5 minutes rejiggering lights because they're going to change in those 5 minutes, you know. And it's about the look on their face or the way they're acting or, you know, the you know, that kind of thing between the interaction between us. So I try not to get too crazy about it. In fact, I think we used the rope again. A friend of mine, he owns a cafe downstairs from where I live in Brooklyn called the Red Horse Cafe. And so I decided to string them up. Which, poor Brent. He, just so you know, Brent is not actually hanging upside down. In fact, I think, let's see, wait, where's Brent? Did I keep it? Okay, so here's Brent that you just saw, and here's Brent in my apartment hanging. Is my Coke right there, Dan? Excuse me for 1 second, it's dry throat. So as you can see, this one is a composite. I was going to hang them up, but then I decided it would be easier to do it this way. The trick with a lot of this stuff is just getting the lighting right, you know. So in this one, you have to light them from underneath. If you can see up top there. In fact, wait a minute. Can I just flip this? I wonder if I can flip this. Rotate right and rotate right. This is my terrible apartment. Excuse it all. But you can see down here, there's a light and a diffuser. So it's sort of, so once you flip him, it's like it's coming down from above, right? So the light matches, which is the trick to all this kind of compositing stuff, is matching light. Make these pictures look like they're the same picture. Actually, you know what? I think there's one more with the rope. Yeah, this girl's tied up down in the basement. Oh, it actually became this photo. The first one was the original. Yeah, she was a good sport. So I kind of created these walls. And the person standing there is actually a picture I took for 365 Portraits, an outtake from 3 years earlier that I used. I turned into a mask to turn into a shadow. But it worked. It's kind of like, who's the creepy guy looking at her, you know? But it's funny because you have to create the shadow, the real person here out of focus, the shadow here, but also the shadow over there, you know, because it's half cut off in the you know. It's the crazy detail stuff that you start thinking about and you start going a little crazy. You end up working on these things and you save them, and then you stare at them and again you go, oh shoot, that shadow doesn't match, or this does this, or you know, he wouldn't have his head turned that way if the rope was this way, you know, that kind of stuff. You get a little crazy. So I'm going to show you some outtakes. Let's start with Kathleen, Turner. Okay, so I originally had an idea. Here's the final shot that I came up with. This is my friend Kathleen Kylo. When I first met her, I had a hard time remembering her name, so I started calling her Turner in my head to remember the Kathleen. And so she's turned into Turner to me, and she actually answers to it. It's really cute. She's a very nice girl, and it was raining, and then it cleared up, and I wanted the rain, so I threw her in the shower. This is my, yeah. I'm such a mean person. This is actually my fire escape. But initially, this was not the idea. The idea was to shoot her this way. These are all raw shots, so you know, don't take the exposure and everything correct, you know, as what I was trying to do. But I like this idea of shooting her with the cityscape behind her, right? This was the idea. But But while I was setting up this shot, I realized that I wanted more light over this side of her, like a rim light there. So I went over and added a rim light. You see this light up here in this side window. And I was trying to get the amount of light right, so I went over to that window to try to get it right. And I took this picture as I was trying to set up the light, and I go, oh, this is a much better vantage point than the one I was using. And so I started shooting over there, and that led to this, which led to that, which led to that. So the point is that it's you don't always end with what you started with, right? But that's part of the fun. Even though these are often contrived, for lack of a better word, I didn't want them to be stiff. I planned out a bunch of them, but I didn't plan out all of them. Here's another one. This is my friend Greg. Oh, okay. So let me start here. This is my friend Greg. This is the final picture. Is this the final picture? Yeah. Okay. So there's the final picture. This is my friend Greg. He's dead. You can see me up here in taking the picture in the blood. I hope this doesn't offend anyone. This one actually matches with, where is Corey? I have Corey shooting him. So there's the before and after. And if you go upstairs, you can see them above each other. So they're kind of fun. He's actually not actually holding a gun in this picture. He was just kind of going like this, mocking it. And I called a college roommate of mine from 15 years ago and said, Steve Ravetti, it's Bill Wadman. Hey, how you doing? Hey, do you still have guns? Yeah. You still take pictures? Yeah. Can you take a picture of a Glock 45 at this angle for me? Sure. And about an hour later, I had a zip file full of images that I then pasted in. And it worked, The muzzle flash is fake. The bullet is fake, obviously. But so anyway, Greg was a good sport. I actually had a really hard time finding somebody to play the dead guy, as it were. And I don't know why. No one wanted to play it. I thought this would be like, ooh, fun, play, dress up, right? A lot of people were very offended by it, which I found interesting. It was fun. Anyway, so I didn't know if I could pull it off, and I needed to find that floor, right? this traditional hexagonal tile that's everywhere in New York City. Well, I couldn't find an expanse of it big enough. So the floor is fake. But I needed to do a test to see if I could actually pull this off. So Heather, again, was over, and I said, Heather, lie down and let's make you look dead. So this is my girlfriend being a good sport again, dying on me. Yeah, I don't know why I put her through this stuff. So Greg came over and we tried a few different things. I thought, maybe we should, this is the original shot of Greg on white. We actually also tried a few other shots. We tried him dead, falling down the stairs.
This is where you live?
Yeah, this is where I live. You don't like it?
Yeah, I do like
Should I move?
I thought we got one space.
This is actually the hallway down to the main floor. Yeah, it's my apartment's not that big, but it's big enough that I can set up seamless and shoot in there if I have to. But the idea was I really like this, right? So I went back to this. So I had to find tile. So I found a little chunk of it online as like a demo for buying it, like on a sales site. And I cloned it all in, and then I had to change it so that you ended up, you get some. Or can I zoom in? Will that zoom over here? It won't zoom over here. Oh yeah, I can zoom over here. So I downsized these. So you get some cracks in here. You have to make it look a little dirty. So there's all like dirt on it and stuff. You also have to change the geometry because your lens isn't going to be perfect. And if it looks like a flat surface, it's going to be even more fake. So you got to bend it out a little bit. Sorry if I'm getting too detailed here. If that's, let me know if I'm getting a little too Photoshop nerdy. So I shot Greg, and that worked fine. And then I needed the other stuff. So I shot the chair, I shot the umbrella, which is, by the way, the same umbrella that was in the picture of Cynthia in the rain inside. The umbrella shows up on a few images too. There's actually all these weird little cookie crumbs through the series of that kind of stuff. Originally, the idea for this shot was, anybody ever see these pictures from like the 1920s and 30s? They were pictures the NYPD took of like deaths and stuff, and they used really wide-angle lenses, and they were so wide-angle you could see the legs of the tripod. I don't know if anybody's seen those. They're actually beautiful photographs, and a lot of times you can actually see the footprints or the tips of people's feet around the edge, like the officers from the scene. I just thought it would be really cool to fake one of these. So, I took pictures of legs and whatever it is and merged the whole thing together. And then I had to create this sign. I looked everywhere for a chalkboard, and I couldn't find, like a chalkboard to do it, so I just created the sign. It works. It does the job. So anyway, so that's a little bit of that. I'm going to show you guys a little bit of, any questions before I move on to some other nerdy stuff? Okay. I'm going to show you some pictures in Photoshop. Yes. Okay, so this is Leslie Forrester. Dan, if I do, actually that's probably about right, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Originally, a lot of people asked how the hell I did this. Why aren't I in the picture? Obviously, it is a composite. If I turn off all of the layers here and just bring up this one, that's the original shot. So I am in the picture, I just hid myself. So the idea for this one was I wanted to shoot in the mirror. Originally, it wasn't going to be so straight on. I was actually just going to shoot her from the side in the mirror. But then we were there and we were shooting and I said, you know what, I think I could pull this off. And this is what a lot of this project was. It was like, could I actually pull that off and have it look real? So I said, screw it, I'm going to try it. So I said, I'm going to try to pull off actually building this thing from scratch. So the next trick is to put her in, right? Now, this picture of her, if I disable the mask, is like that. Okay? So the picture of her has nothing to do with this mirror or anything. I actually just had her leaning on a table off to the side. This is at offices that she works at. I think they do some advertising stuff. That's the light box in the background. Is this too nerdy for you guys? Okay. I don't want to get, So anyway, so masking her in. So the trick here is just to get her fitting within the mirror, right? But the background around her is way too light. So the trick is to go in and darken that, right? So we want to make that a little bit more highlighted on her. Now, there are those bulbs around the edge, which I lost the reflections when I brought her in, so we got to bring the reflections back around the edge, right? This is sort of the step-by-step stuff. Now, the problem is that she still kind of looks just stuck in there because mirrors are dirty. So the trick here is to actually bring back mirror dust, which I do, and I actually bring it in twice because it wasn't dark enough, So see, after and before, you see how much it's all about creating this illusion that whatever you're doing is real and not just manufactured. It's very, very tricky. I actually had to go in and cover some labels. I don't know if you guys see down here. There's like some MAC cosmetic labels, so I didn't want to get people in trouble, so I turned those on. The next thing is a lot of curves, right? You're trying to like pull out a little detail in her dress. Then you're, brightening her up a little bit, this kind of thing, right? Her hair, little pop. I wanted to darken, add contrast to all that stuff. Color balance was a little off, so I warmed it up a little bit. This is the kind of stuff. And then I'm going to vignette the whole thing to pull her out from the center, right? I want to demote the outside, the perimeter. Now, this still didn't look real enough to me, or rather, it looked too real. And I wanted it to be a little bit more fantastical. So I had to make the lights, I added glare to the lights, you see. So the whole thing feels like a more like, a show on Broadway, And I actually even added a little lens flare in this one to, make it a little bit multi-layered. So, all told and then a little grain to haze up the whole thing to make it a little bit less digitally. And that's what you end up with. So, from the beginning, and then, to the end. Any questions?
How much time did you spend?
Honestly, probably 8 to 10 hours a picture. And if I had to redo it, would it take me 8 to 10 hours? Probably not. But when you're doing it not the first time ever doing Photoshop, but I just mean when you're working on something from the beginning, you don't know where you're going to end up every time, So there's a lot of dead ends and there's a lot of, that kind of thing. I'm sure I actually simplified these greatly. This currently has 20 layers, but I think I squashed at least half of them down. So originally it was probably more like 40 or 50 layers, It's the mirror dust is actually from the original mirror picture. It's actually, let me see here. I'll show you actually. Because originally what it is is, yeah, even if I turn it off and I turn it back on, yeah, I actually I took the mirror from here, and because that stuff is so much lighter than the background, I could use I used lighten, I think on the layer, I actually used screen on the blending mode. So it just dumped the lighter stuff on top. It's not ideal, but it worked in this particular case because I was just trying to make it look a little hazy, you know. I was going to do a couple more of these if that's all right with you guys. Is that cool? Okay.
What selection tools do you use, like for the dress?
Oh, you know, that's a good question because a lot of people swear by all kinds of different ways of doing selections. I have found that almost none of them work, or rather, none of them work the way I want them to work. You know, the stuff built into Photoshop, the magic wand and all that kind of stuff, those things are great for big chunks of solid color and that kind of stuff. But when you get into detailed stuff where you're trying to cut something out, most of the time I just go in and mask and go into 100% or 200% and use a brush. You know, you know what it is? Even if you use the automatic things, you end up having to clean them up afterwards. So a lot of times I just figure, you know what, I'll just do it from scratch. Plus there's something, I don't know, I like the idea that I'm doing it from scratch. You know, that there's in CS5, I use CS4, I haven't upgraded to CS5. And one of the reasons why is because that content-aware fill kind of offends me. You know, it's like, you can't make this that easy, you know, because it should be hard to get rid of that person in the background, you know?
If you really, I was practicing it all day.
Yeah.
And finally, I got it. You have to, when you don't get it, you have the outline.
Yes.
That's the most common thing.
Yeah.
If you undo and redo and undo,
Give it let it try harder.
yeah, it really did some.
But I don't want it to be easy. You know, I want it to be hard. You know, and well, that's the thing. If I was a wedding photographer or an event photographer and I had to hand you 100 pictures 2 days later, there's no way I could work like this, right? This kind of stuff is the stuff that I'm doing because I'm making one of them. You know, I shot 70, 80 pictures of Leslie, and there's one final image. You know, I'm not the kind of photographer who has to plow through tons of images and hand a lot over. You know, it's just a different way of working. You know.
How did you get so incredibly skilled in Photoshop?
Practice. Yeah, I've never taken any classes or anything. So I've never taken classes in photography. I'm self-taught. I did a lot of Photoshop when I was an art director, but it's funny because and even then it was just sort of learning it by doing. But using Photoshop for this stuff versus, say, designing, you know, a website or a thing, you're using completely different tools. It's funny. It's like it's the same program, but you're using completely different stuff. Let me just see. How do I get back to? Hey, Dan. Oh, we only opened one of them up. That's why. No problem.
Tactile.
The images.
You are really tactile.
I am.
Like a painter.
Thank you. I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah. That's what you keep reaching for.
Yeah, exactly. I don't actually normally use a Mac, so this is like tricky to me. There we go. Okay. Actually, that one got a little too big, didn't it? Let's bring it back there. Okay, so this is my friend Jess Hodge. She is a guitarist. And this was in January or February, so it was very, very cold. And I couldn't get the picture I wanted to take, and this is the final image. So I decided to see if I could actually pull it off as a composite. So Jess Hodge is not actually outside on the street. Jess Hodge is nowhere to be found. Yeah, that's the original shot. Jess was brought in here, and I will show you the original because I think I could turn off her layer mask. There she is in my apartment. Now, again, as I said earlier, it's all about getting the lighting right? As long as you get the light on her to match where the light would be in the real shot, you can create these illusions. Now, are these perfect? No. If you really stare at them and you know that I use Photoshop, you could say, yeah, you probably Photoshopped that. But it'll take you a minute, you know, which is good enough for me. So I laid her in, but it's as you can see, it's all wrong still, right? So let me just, yeah. So she's floating in there. And most of it's because there should be shadow all in here, because if she's lit from these street lights and nothing else, so let's darken that, okay? And that gets us pretty far along, just making her sit in there a little bit better. The trick is, I was X number of inches from the wall. I was X number of inches up on a tripod. You have to get the angles right, you know. Let me darken a little bit behind her head there. And I think, what are we doing there? Oh, we're darkening some more. And then I'm gonna darken the whole, you know, give the sidewalk a little more contrast. The trick here, and I'm gonna darken the whole thing behind her. So that gets us pretty close. But I wanted a guitar case in there. And so here's her guitar case. The guitar case was actually shot on the paper in my apartment the same way it was before. But I wanted it to be a little crazy, so I wanted lots and lots and lots and lots of coins in it, right? I wanted it as if somebody dumped piles of money in her thing, right? It's cute, right? This was the idea. I'm gonna disable the mask so you can see. I actually closed the guitar case, put a piece of black cloth over it, and poured change onto it. So it's in the shape of the guitar, it's lit in the same way, and then I could use that and let that sit inside. You see? These are the jokes. Yeah. So I thought I needed a little bit more, so I wanted to put coins on the ground. So I did the same thing that I did before, which laying them on the black, and I sat the coins down. I wanted a person in here watching her, so there's me. Yeah, I shot some self-portraits. Those are my knees. And then I did a whole lot of curves to get the whole thing to feel a little bit more dark, you know. And, you know, some sharpening and a lens flare. The funny thing is that things like grain and fake lens flares and the dust on the mirror and those things, it tricks you because you think she can't be put in there because there's dust in front of her. You know what I mean? The dust that's on the mirror is in front of the image. So it's sort of like you pull these things that should be impossible, and that's what makes the illusion better, you know? So anyway, this is Jess Hodge on the street. That one was fun because she was good. So I got one more for you if you guys are all right, and then I will let you get on with your day. Where can I load? Oh, I was going to show you Greg. Perfect. We can do that. I can actually show you the floor. Sorry. Loading big images. I actually shrunk them way down from what a lot of these images are like 1.5 gigs PSDs. Okay, so here's Greg, but we're gonna back out and go straight down to nothingness. So this is the floor, and had I do it to do again, I would have made. I notice now, and it drives me nuts, but I refuse to go backwards and do new stuff. I would have gotten rid of, you see how it's the vertical stripes? They drive me nuts. It's a little bit too much, but you don't really notice it after the fact, but whatever. And then I added dirt, you see? I had to grime it up a little bit because it can't be too clean.
What kind of dirt was it?
It was actually not real dirt. I think it was just a splatter brush, and then I pulled the opacity down. So it just looks like smudges and stuff on the ground. Where is my cursor? There it is. Okay, so let me bring Greg in. Where's Greg? There he is. Okay, here's Greg. Now you saw the picture of Greg before on the white, so you know where that came from. And then I wanted to add the blood. Blood is tough, right, to get it to look real. I found people online who took pictures of splatter, which I know is very unfun, but it's true, it exists. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's a lot of that kind of stuff. A lot of research goes into this. Google's fantastic for splattered blood. You didn't know that? So anyway, that's the splattered blood is the trick, right? And I didn't want to have. I have friends who are special effects people, but I decided not to have it be more graphic than that, which I probably could have, but I decided against it. So then I brought in the umbrella. We brought in the chair. So he was knocked over. The umbrella fell. Bring in the tripod legs. Now I put a little blood on his face. I don't know if you can see that there. Let's zoom in. You have to have a little blood coming out of his mouth. Excuse the graphicness. It's all fake. It's all make-believe. Let's see here. Oh, so so this is the whole thing on white, just so you can see the floor or no floor, right? And then the sign, which is just like that, which, really high res isn't nearly as interesting looking. But you know those things that are like slatted fabric and you push that's kind of what I wanted it to be, right? So that's what I did. And then I thought it would be really cute to put myself in it. So I added myself up here in the blood. See there, me taking the picture. And if you go upstairs afterwards, you can see me big and close up. So anyway, so this is Greg. So the trick here, let me brighten that up a little bit and then put some curves to make it a little darker. And then see, a lot of these curves have huge amounts of, can I pull this over here so you can see? A lot of these, look at the masks in here, they're all hand-done weird masks to mask different parts of him. And then vignette the whole thing to pop him out a little bit, and then some grain, and then you get to the final shot. So anyway, I finished all of these Drabble things, and I'm very happy with them. They make me smile. It's kind of sick that they make me smile, but they do. I just give you a quick 2-minute thing of what I'm doing now, which is 2 simultaneous projects. I'm doing one called Panels. I wanted to sort of take the whole Drabbles thing to the next level and say, originally I was going to make really long panoramas of one big story, like take pictures of like a whole block of a street and have zombies coming up over here and then having people fighting zombies over there and all this kind of stuff. And I thought, all right, yeah, I could do that, but then I have these big long things. I was like, how else could I tell a story that's bigger than one image? And I thought, well, why don't I do it kind of comic book style? So again, Heather is the, man, she's the first one of everything, isn't she? She was very nice, and Dan and Claude helped hold her up and hold lights up and put fans on her to make it look like this. A lot of compositing. I couldn't find a good picture like this, and I went to try to take it, and I couldn't find one, so I found a guy online on Flickr. I said, do you mind if I use your picture in my composite? He said, sure, no problem. So I did not take the background of this particular frame. I've done 2 more of these, or 3 more of these. I'll show you. One of them is a little graphic, so I warn you now. This is Meg's teeth falling out. These are all dreams, right? These are all prototypical dreams that people have, nightmares, falling to the ground. Her teeth are falling out. Poor Meg. Look at her, she's smiling and are you embarrassed? No, she's right behind you, actually, the girl in this thing. The blood is actually, wait, what was it, Meg?
Soy sauce.
Yeah. Red dye, yeah. It was nasty, and that's why she's grimacing, not because she was acting, but because it actually tasted that bad. The teeth are actually little chunks of white eraser, artist eraser, the hard stuff. I cut up, made them into sort of teeth kind of shaped things. I whittled them down, and then I let them soak in tea to darken them a little bit overnight. So anyway, there's that one. I did this one where she's getting chased in the woods, and it turns out it's her husband putting his hand on her shoulder in the final frame. This is in Prospect Park. She was a good sport. And then the final one, I said, what, I'm doing too many creepy dreams, so I did a flying dream. This is 24 balloons, and it looks like it's not enough. I think I should have done like 4,000 dozen balloons. But I like the way she's falling through the frame on this one. That's the part I like about that one. Anyway, so I'm doing that, and then I'm also doing a series called Motion, a bunch of dancers. These are long exposures, 3-second exposures, and we work through trying to make things. They're supposed to be a little abstract. They're maddeningly abstract, but they're interesting because it's so not a still image. It's funny because some of these dancers, this one is a girl named Iran Buggy. Her name is Iran Buggy. Isn't that awesome? She's one of the leads in Paul Taylor. She's a sweetheart, and she came over and we did a bunch of these. But the night before, she did another photo shoot where the guy was using strobes popping every like half second. So it was like pop, 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 pop. So like he was getting these strobographic effects. I saw the finals, but I didn't see them. So it's funny because these are the exact opposite. These are just 3-second long things. I don't know, they're kind of interesting. So this is what I'm working on now. And Yeah, I thought you guys would find a little behind the scenes stuff a little more interesting. I like those ones. Interesting stuff. Anyway, so if anyone has any questions, I would be glad to answer them.